Hi everybody, it's Christy, your digital technology librarian here at the library, and this week I have yet another Film Rec Friday for everyone. This week we are going to focus in on all things food. So if you are a foodie, if you are interested in the food industry, hopefully one of these titles will strike a chord with you. I really love films about foods and the industry, so I hope that you might find some of these interesting. As always, these topics all come from our three streaming video services. That's CleveNet Overdrive, Hoopla, and Canopy. So if you have a Milan-Berlin Library card, any of these recommendations are available to you for free, of course. So without any further ado, let's get started. So our first set of recommendations all come from CleveNet Overdrive. And the very first one is called Today's Special. Now, the story behind today's special is actually really interesting to me. It starts with a young man who is an ambitious sous chef who ends up leaving his job at this super prestigious fine dining establishment when he's passed over for a promised promotion to head chef. He knows that he's going to get a better position somewhere. He starts boasting about all of these opportunities he has in Europe, none of which, of course, is true at the time. And then circumstances happen that his family's failing Indian restaurant gets into some trouble, and he has to temporarily help out there. So he begrudgingly does so. And that is when the story really picks up. And that's all within the first, 15 minutes or so. It really starts to move really quickly. So once he starts working at this family restaurant, is when you really start meeting some fantastically odd characters. They all have, the people who work at this restaurant have these really particular ways of doing things, probably none of which would be considered normal in any kitchen, I would hope. And then he ends up meeting a ton of other people who help him sort of rebuild this family restaurant. And he learns surprisingly a lot about his own culture through these new people he's meeting. And so you have this marvelous backdrop of Indian culture along with Indian food, and it all sort of culminates in this really beautiful story. I mean, you've got a lot of comedy, of course, going on because, like I said, you have some crazy characters over at that restaurant, but then you have this really human relationship between this young chef and his family, in that, especially as a first generation American, you sort of see how he's so Western and he loves his family, but they don't always see eye to eye, especially he and his father. So you get some really good family drama in there, but it's never too heavy or melodramatic. There's always a touch of humor going on. Plus, again, this backdrop of really fantastic looking and sounding, because there's music going on in the background too, Indian food, and it's just really a marvelous movie. So when you throw that culinary magic in there with everything else, you've got a lovely and entertaining weekend film to check out. So if you're a food lover, I would definitely recommend Today's Special. CleveNet also has a couple other films that I'd really like to recommend. One is called Love's Kitchen, which, when I first read the synopsis, I wasn't really sure. It's about a grieving widower and really acclaimed chef who uproots his supportive daughter and a couple loyal members of his kitchen staff, takes them from this bustling city and this once really prosperous restaurant establishment, moves them to some small town and a small pub that he can take over. And I was just not totally sold on it. It sounded like it could be very hokey and very movie of the week. But it actually ended up being very charming. It is definitely aided by the chemistry between the two leads. The chef is played by Dougray Scott, and a food critic is played by Claire Forlani, and they have sparks from the very get-go. Um, it's definitely like a pretty standard romantic comedy, but it's also like really fun and I think really quite lovely and moving. He's dealing with all of this grief and having to move past the sudden death of his wife, and she's got her own set of baggage going on as well. So you have, of course, chef versus food critic, though she's not necessarily acting in that capacity in this film. But she definitely has strong opinions, and we see a lot of that. And so you have these two very strong-willed characters bumping up against each other in a battle of wills, and that's always fun. Like I always find those kinds of comedies and rom-coms really, really enjoyable. So if we add to that, like, some weird and quirky small town style characters, think sort of like the British version of Gilmore Girls Stars Hollow. So those kind of characters, a really over the top, fairly ridiculous food critic who is also quite the personality off screen, uh, who is they're kind of gearing up for a judgment call from, and then even like a small Gordon Ramsay cameo. Mix all those things together, and it's a nice, charming little romantic comedy. So if you're looking for a little romance this weekend, Love's Kitchen might be the one for you. And lastly, within the CleveNet Overdrive recommendations, I've mentioned it before, but I would be being totally remiss not to recommend Jiro Dreams of Sushi. Uh, Phenomenal, phenomenal documentary, whether or not you're a fan of sushi. If you are, you absolutely have to watch it. Um, it's amazing. It follows primarily this super, super famous sushi master, Jiro Ono, who owns a very, very small 10-seat sushi establishment in the heart of Tokyo. And it really focuses in on his focus and near obsession with perfecting the art of sushi. Just watching him and the way he clearly thinks and looks about sushi is so rather awe-inspiring, and really, 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 his whole approach to how just a single slice can change everything, how different looks and different scents can affect the entire dining experience. It is an absolute must watch. You also get a lot of drama coming in from his relationship with his sons, particularly his eldest son, who's in that really difficult position of being a successor to, I guess, the brand, even though it's not, a brand. But, how do you make a name for yourself when your father is at the absolute pinnacle of your field? How do you take over when your father still holds the title of head chef in a family restaurant or establishment of any kind? I mean, he has a lot of things that he has to figure out, all while still being respectful to his father and, again, like the top banana in his field. So you have all of this family drama. It really is a documentary that flows like any other fictional film would. So if you've not seen Jiro Dreams of Sushi, I absolutely recommend that you do. It is predominantly going to be subtitled, but it really doesn't feel like a subtitled film at all. So Jiro Dreams of Sushi, please do give it a try. My third set of recommendations all come from our Canopy service, and the first of those is Eastside Sushi, which tells the story of Juana, a young, hardworking Mexican-American mother who goes from chopping fruit at her father's fruit stand, which of course shows off some extraordinary knife skills. So she goes from that to working at this very established, traditional, and popular sushi restaurant. Now, traditionally, sushi is a very male dominated field. So we're getting to see her deal with a ton of misogyny that's pretty on par with what documentaries talk about a lot of times. Um, and then we're seeing what could be a behind the scenes sort of experience of what that would be like for anyone of the female persuasion trying to break into the field, let alone a Mexican American woman. Uh, I absolutely love this character of Juana. She's so determined, and no matter how many walls she bumps up against, she keeps going. You know, before she gets this job at this Japanese restaurant, she knew nothing about Japanese food. You know, she knows she has her knife skills, but that's really it. And then she ends up loving the cuisine, you know, and that's what makes her want to pursue a career in that particular field, even realizing that it's going to be difficult. She loves the food that much. So once she learns about these flavors on her own, of course, because almost no one is willing to help her, she starts blending in her own ideas of what would taste even better. And so um, her own cultural experiences and knowledge sort of blends with this very traditional Japanese method of cooking, and you end up with Eastside Sushi, which is really, really cool way to come up with another hit of that title. Um, you also get a small hint of romance with this one, and it actually works really, really well, I think, with the title. It's not at all contrived. Um, and it adds that extra layer, you know, of what's really going on here. This meeting of East and West is not just on the plate. So if you're looking for a really, really well done film that has a lot of genre elements to it, from comedy to drama to romance, I would strongly recommend Eastside Sushi. It really is an absolutely wonderful film with a really strong female lead. So please do check it out. Now, my very last recommendation this week is from a movie called Big Night. And Big Night stars Tony Shalhoub from Monk and Stanley Tucci from The Devil Wears Prada, both of whom are actors that I've followed for years and years. And this movie, they star as characters Primo and Segundo, and these two are immigrant brothers from Italy who have, at the beginning of the movie, been established in the States for a while. They have this restaurant that serves extraordinary food, but that just can't seem to get a clientele. I mean, it's pretty close to a failing restaurant. Now, despite the fact that Primo, who is Tony Shalhoub, is a genius in the kitchen, they have tons of problems, you know, to the point where Segundo, the second brother, is going to have to start looking for help with loans and things, or else they're going to have to move back home, and neither wants to do that. They want to continue to pursue their dreams, of course. So outside of the restaurant issues, they also very much have problems with women, with life in general. Primo is definitely, it likes one character played by Allison Janney, who is always delightful on screen, but he's so shy he can't have a single solitary conversation with her. And then Stanley Tucci has had a longtime girlfriend and he just can't seem to commit. And she's played by Minnie Driver. You've got Isabella Rossellini in this, and the late Ian Holm is in it as well. And everything in this movie is all about this ensemble cast. They're all huge characters that just sort of jump off of the screen, and everything culminates in this one night, which sort of, you know, the fate of the restaurant depends on this one evening where potentially this super famous celebrity is going to come to one magical dinner that's supposed to save the restaurant. Now, this one night is full of some of the most delicious looking food I've ever seen on the screen. including this one dish called timpano, which until this movie I'd never heard of. It's like a very specific regional dish in Italy, and they'd looked for something sort of rare when they were writing the film and creating it that could sort of cause all of these oohs and ahs to the audience, and it really, really did. I actually looked it up afterwards to see exactly what it was and sort of the history of it, and it was fascinating to see this fictional film take something so specific and make it such a huge part of the story. So, anyway, with all of the drama going on and all of that drama having hints of humor to it, it's an absolutely wonderful movie, whether or not you're a foodie, but definitely for people who are foodies. If you love movies that have really great relationships with brothers, these two main actors do an extraordinary job. Like, the bickering comes right on top of one another, and it feels very, very authentic. Um, and then, of course, like I said, the food is amazing. So please do check it out. Just don't watch it if you're hungry. You will absolutely carb out afterward. Um, so, yes, Big Night from Canopy, absolutely recommended. Now, so that is all I have for this week. Um, if you have any recommendations of your own, please, please, please do write them down in the comments and let us know what you're watching, what you're interested in seeing. Um, have a couple really quick announcements. Summer reading program starts on Saturday, June the 27th, and it's going to run all the way until Saturday, August the 8th. Our doors are now open for limited hours, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. until 6 p.m., Friday and Saturday, 10 a.m. until 5 p.m., and then every day, 10 a.m. until 11 a.m. is reserved for our seniors and our at-risk individuals. So we would love to see you. Again, any recommendations, let us know, and I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend. We'll see you next week. Bye.